to be near Clyde and Adrian and to learn about how to make little puppets like this. This is, we call it the monkey control because this little monkey that's in a case over here has this little control that he developed, inspired by like a lumberjack puppet that he wanted to just animate a little more. And so, hold out your hand if you need to stage. But these little characters were lots of fun, and then I realized to make a living I would have to make larger puppets, and so I began making my puppets and went to New York City with these little elves over here in this front case that were based on Brian Froud's artwork from the book Fairies that came out in the late 70s. And so I was hoping I could get a job on the Dark Crystal movie. And when I got there, they said, well, we're moving to production to London and we're not hiring anyone, but spend the day in the workshop. And it was like a graduate course in puppetry. The engineer showed me all these little materials that you could work with to really get really fine controls. And he said, try making some traditional rod puppet controls. And there was a woman carving a big bird foot. And I said, how do you do that? And I learned how, that she showed me very simply. And I spent the next few years just trying to perfect this. And some of my foam characters over there in the corner from a whaling show. And then there's a whale inside the case, and the foam moves beautifully. So I started making bigger puppets. Let me grab a puppet over here. So I became fascinated with this style of puppetry from Czechoslovakia, a rod puppet control. Most people at the time were making Muppets and things like that, and I really got into these figures. She's carved out of holly, and they had a simple up and down and side-to-side control, and then I started engineering to where I could tip the head back and forth with these little controls like that. So it's been a career of art and carving and craft, engineering, and then more importantly, storytelling. We live in a rich area. There's a national storytelling convention over in Jonesboro every year. And I started getting into the storytellers, and I decided I would be a storyteller with puppets. And so that's how I pursued my career. Anyway, I want to introduce you all to Clyde over here. He's got some really fun stuff going on. Come on out, Clyde.
Stand clear and give some room for a man. Don't make me shoot somebody. And don't make me pull this kilt up. I'll have to tell you, everything they said is a lie about this guy. He's the puppet, and I'm the puppeteer. Thank you. I have to say, first of all, that I've been called Hobey's mentor, and it's not exactly true. I learned as much from him as he learned from me, maybe more, and not all just about puppets. One of the things I learned was, well, he's a role model for honesty and good nature, and everybody. He makes good friends and keeps them, and so there's a lot for me to learn from Hobey. And making some puppets was just on the side. And this is Angus McPhee. Big Angus McPhee. Big Angus McPhee. And he's a little bit naughty. And he's never been on a show. He's just entertained one-on-one with kids and stuff. I have taken him to the Grandfather Mountain Highland Games a few times and goofed around with him around campfires. And once I had a couple of shots of scotch. And he would have a shot or two of scotch. get naughty in the firelight. And, so, hang on, let's hope it's not that guy. This is little Angus McPhee. Don't make me cut you about the ankles. Oh, somebody dropped a dime. What was I saying? Others can be naughty too, you know. This is my gypsy bar though. I sleep right in here. This is my horse. Some people think it's a sheep, but it's not, it's a horse. Don't call my sheep a horse. I mean, don't call my horse a sheep. Let's see, where was I? Oh, man, that was a rough night last night. Oh, my God. Phew. And I think I still have peanut butter on the bottom of that foot. Oh, well, we'll just stroll up here to the little back stroke.
So, do any of you have any questions?
What is the history of the Czechoslovakian technique that you were talking about?
Well, Czechoslovakian rod puppets were very popular in the last 100 years, and it was just a more traditional style of puppetry.
Did it have to do with the way you moved their parts?
It was that they were full-figured characters, and like people were using marionettes and string puppets primarily. Hand puppets were still sort of a toy at the time, maybe. And then, but they really developed a real miniature kind of theater approach to the whole thing. And I was fascinated. And so I took the things that Clyde showed me about engineering puppets and didn't actually get my hands on any real Czech puppets, but kind of figured out how they must have made them move, and the rods on all these characters are something called music wire, and so when I lived down near Clyde, I got my music wire out of an old dead piano. So I would get the wire out and use that and kind of a high tension steel check out Czech puppetry. Yeah.
And what stories do you like to tell?
I like to tell, I do a lot of folk tales, and I work primarily in schools and libraries, so those folk tales are great. I'm a Kennedy Center teaching artist, so we were some of the first ones working with arts integration and connecting puppetry and children making shadow puppets and telling folk tales with them, but connecting those to curricular ideas so that a kid like me who was super into the arts and all the rest of it just went over my head, you know, and if I had that arts integration and could be making shadow puppets and puppets, I would have really gotten into it even more. And so, you know.
You have to give back.
Yeah. Yes.
If you had gone to London, would you have preferred to work with the Gelflings or the Skeksis?
Oh,
that's a dig.
The Skeksis, without a doubt. The day I went to the Henson workshop and they were, Brian and Wendy Froud were there. Their little baby, they would get married and their baby would be the little baby in the Labyrinth movie, if you've seen that. And, but they were, the engineer in there had worked for my next door neighbor in an advertising agency before he got the job at Henson. And so my neighbor said, go in and talk to him, and he was showing me how Skeksis' fingers work, and things like that. And so I would have definitely wanted to work with the Skeksis. But then I tried to get a job with them, and they, in New York, just on the Muppets. And the woman pulled me into her office and said, "You don't want to work here. You'd be making pan rods and then doing something. You're having a lot of fun. Go home and do your own thing, and you'll have it'll be way more fulfilling." And so I did that. I went home, and I spent 3 years just learning how to carve the foam, and I finally went to a puppet festival. And when I was in the 5th grade, a marionette show had come to my school, and I was asked if I would help the marionettist for the day, help them load in and whatnot. And it was in a room, there was a big, his stage was kind of high up, and there was a beam like that in the room that he was afraid he'd hit his head on. And so I ran and got him. We were in a sports building, so I got him a lacrosse helmet. And midway during the show, all of a sudden I heard this thump, and the puppets, the marionette sagged to the floor, and he caught the beam in the little air channel in the helmet. At any rate, I was at this festival, and I decided I was going to do a workshop, but it wasn't in the program, and they said, "Go do a show at the talent stage." And so I did, and all the puppeteers were there, and I showed the foam puppets, and no one had really seen anything, no one was doing anything like that. And so, like, after the show, I was approached by, "Can you come to California? Can you come to Florida?" My career really began that night. The guy who went on right before me had a marionette, and he was from Connecticut, and I asked him, "You didn't ever come to Rumsey Hall, did you?" And he said, "I wouldn't remember that in 100 years. And I go, and I know that reality, you go to hundreds of schools. And then I said, "Well, this guy hit his head and passed out during the show." He said, "I'll never forget that." and I told him, "Well, that's why I'm here today, this Zodiac." And so it was, puppetry is a small world, isn't it, Clyde?
And a big one.
And a big one too. So we have puppeteer friends around the world, and we all stay in touch, and things come full circle. Some little kid who came to my show will come up and say, "I'm a puppeteer now." So.
Okay, that's all in there.
Oh, yes.
Well, I noticed the pecan puppet was moving. Is there something in one of those?
Oh,
The pecan puppets. These are amazing. Clyde, I'm going to let you tell the story.
Madeline asked, because I also make Appalachian traditional toys, and buy the brains of toys, and get a few of them, get 1 or 2 of them out. And that one too, Hobey, the tea was in a teacup.
Oh, okay, I'll get that next.
Walk around and let people look at it. So I got a big one here made up. Coconut. It's not Appalachian. But, old time Christmas in Appalachia was a time when people could get nuts at the store. Pecans don't grow here. They grow along the Gulf Coast. But they're the Native American nuts. And so they would haul them out, get the meat out. And they'd make these long ears, and eyes, and tails and stuff. And there would be a plug somewhere where they put a live fly inside. It's called a fly pig. And they would set it on the mantle because it was warm there and the fly keep moving. And as he was in there, the thing would be doing this. And the people would say, it was the first mechanical toy that ran on its own. And it is the smallest puppet operated by the smallest puppeteer. And that's what it looks like inside. They just go all throughout. And any bug can crawl around in there, but flies are the main thing. And but it was a fragile little toy, and the kids, it wasn't gonna last. It wasn't like toys like this. It's called a Wibby Diddle. G-Hall, when the guys driving a horse, he uses the word haw and G, meaning left or right. And that's why this is called that, because it will go, let's make it go one way. Okay, now let's make it reverse. Come on. Give me a second. All right, you gotta hold your mouth a certain way. Your mouth over here. But these survive, because they were big and tough. But the little fly pigs, we get fresh. And you know, in the folklorists, and that's always the kids who got lots of looking for stories, songs, toys, instruments, whatever. They just overlook the little pecans that they're even song, you know?
You want this teacup too, Clyde?
What?
Teacup?
Oh, this is called the Tempest in a Teacup. A little bit Shakespearean, I think it's anyway, it's a porcelain teacup. And there's a Ford truck transmission shrunk down in it. That makes it work. And the most difficult thing about making this was the fact that I broke 2 or 3 teacups before I got a hole drilled through them. That was the hard part. Yes, sir. This is another Appalachian toy. And then I'll put it back over the mountain and Hobey. This is called a limberjack. And when I used to play Dulcimer or something, you know, show and tell, storytelling, I've got this guy dancing while I was limberjacks. They're in Europe, they come from Europe, you know, some on strings, or some that was 2 people dancing together. Sometimes it was 2 guys fighting, sometimes it was an animal, sometimes it was a man, and it could be a little soft shoe, or he could really get up there. Any other questions for Hobey?
What tool did you use to get the foam super smooth the way you got it?
To carve the foam, the first tool is an electric meat knife. Because they decided they really didn't need one. And, but they're the perfect tool for carving, for sawing out the shapes. So, when I was learning carving, Clyde showed me, you know, you draw the profile on a block of wood and you cut that shape out, and then you cut this shape out here, and then once you have those 2 profiles, well, it works the same way with the foam. I cut those out, and then I use little Viscar scissors and just carve for several hours on it.
That makes sense.
And it doesn't get it perfectly smooth, but it gets it pretty smooth. And so we call them foamies. All right. Well,
We got tons of snacks,
Yeah.
and Hobey and Clyde are gonna be hanging out if you guys do have questions, and definitely check out the steam-powered devil on your way out. Hobey dancing, so.
I'll tell just one quick little story.
Okay.
This little character in orange over here, I had just read autobiography